And we will begin with an assessment. So again, keep your eye on the chat. We're going to upload an Excel spreadsheet, which I'd like you to download that. And it's just to give you a guide as to where you are in terms of this blockchain journey. If I bring up the assessment on my screen, that you can just see what I'm referring to, if my computer will cooperate, and there it goes. This is basically what you're looking at. When you download it, you'll indicate whether you agree, disagree, strongly agree, and all those wonderful options. And then you can see how you are in terms of the blockchain. And we will do the assessment again at the end. If you'd like to share your results, feel free. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It is for your eyes only. But some people like sharing, and we like people that like sharing. So feel free to share. Okay, so now you're going to have an idea of where you're at once you've done this assessment. But we come to, why are we joining this webinar? And we're joining this webinar because blockchain will help you to save time, reduce hassle, and eliminate confusion. Now, those are sweeping statements that a lot of technologies claim, but at the end of this webinar, you will understand how blockchain can save you time, how it reduces hassle in your business and eliminates confusion by being a single source of truth, or unifying information for you. And blockchain is also an important thing to keep your eye on. The world has changed dramatically over the past few years, and blockchain is one of the technologies that really is going to continue changing the way that we operate in our personal lives and in business. Now, how are you going to get this understanding? How are you going to answer this why? So we've said, why are you here? You're here to learn how to save time, reduce costs, and eliminate confusion. How are we going to do that? Well, we are going to teach you how you can assess and apply blockchain in your business. We're going to give you some insights, some case studies on how blockchain has been deployed in some of our clients and how we have personally deployed it, and grasp this why by the end of the webinar. Before we now dive into these case studies and this analysis, let's maybe just have a look at where blockchain originated. So we might still,
Vincent, can I interrupt you for a second there? Has people had a chance to do the assessment? Give us a heads up whether you've had a moment to do the 8 or 9 questions in the assessment and gained the score at the bottom of your assessment. Just give us a few thumbs ups on the chats.
See, I got swept away by this the sea.
I can see you're on the currents have got you. So let's give people a minute or two to complete it. And so Gillian, thanks for responding.
Play some music for a minute while we wait. Abby, some people are asking just if you could upload the assessments for those that joined just after you posted it. If you could just post it again, please. Abby's posted it again.
There we go.
Okay.
I think Abby posted again because some new people just joined. So for For those who just joined, we're posting an assessment which will give you an indication of your level of engagement with blockchain. And hopefully we're going to do the same assessment at the end, and hopefully you would have moved the needle a little bit. Thanks, Susan. All right, yeah. Over to you, Vincent.
Okay, so assessment will tell you where you're at in terms of blockchain. And this may be a new concept to some of us, and I think some of us have known about blockchain for a while. But I believe most of us think of blockchain as, so we call it a noughties thing. The late 2000s is when blockchain came about. And in fact, it is not that nascent a technology. It has its roots in the 1970s. So between the 1970s and 1980s, this concept of cryptography or encrypting things started to evolve in the digital world. So there was cryptography back in the world wars, World War I and World War II, when we encoded messages that were sent between different bases in the military. But we then came into a digital world with computers, and cryptography then started to evolve. And that is a foundational aspect of blockchain. Now, during the 1980s and 70s, a whole bunch of stuff happened. Good luck if you can read that. I didn't want you to be able to read what's written there, so please don't try and read. We're going to move through this quite quickly. But things happened, and we will share a very nice video where we've broken down this timeline at the end of the presentation. So please do stay with us, and then you can get the link to the video that goes into a bit more detail around this chronology of blockchain. Then in the 1990s to the 2000s, distributed computing started to come into its own. And that basically meaning networks and computers being able to think on problems together and connect problems together, not operating in isolation. And there's a sequence of events between 1990 and 2000 that builds up to then moving between 2000 and 2010, which is the decade in which blockchain's genesis occurred. So we have this foundation of cryptography and distributed computing that goes for about 30 years before blockchain comes into its own. Interesting thing I just want to point out to you here is that the underlying algorithm, the cryptography that comes from the 1980s, is about cryptographic algorithms. And the special algorithm that we use in almost all blockchains comes from the NSA. Thank you, the US government, that created the SHA-256 algorithm. Very sexy name, that. So in 2000 to 2010, blockchain basically was established. Satoshi Nakamoto released his white paper, and the first block was created on Bitcoin. Then in 2010 through to 2012, we can see our time increments are getting shorter here as change starts to happen more rapidly. So in that period, we start seeing transactions happening. And the first transaction on blockchain was purchasing a pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin. Can you imagine that? Obviously, the exchange rate of Bitcoin to the US dollar was minuscule, not $60,000 or $30,000 for a Bitcoin. That'd be a very expensive pizza. It was a market-related price, and that happened in those 2 years. Following that, 2013 to 2014, we start to see the evolution of smart contracts. So that means that Ethereum came about, and we started seeing smart contracts. So now I've told you blockchain, I've told you Bitcoin, and I've told you about Ethereum and smart contracts. And we then start to get to the era where we are now, where there's applications running on the blockchain. So smart contracts is now an application, but we also have distributed autonomous organizations. We have chat apps and all sorts of other things, and adoption of blockchain technology. We've got elections running on the blockchain. And we have countries adopting blockchain as their primary the database of operation within the government. Okay, so that's the history. And I just want to take out some of those concepts that I just discussed now and just distill it for you a little bit in case you were overwhelmed by some of the things that I said. So blockchain is a way of documenting information that can't be altered. Okay, that's basically what blockchain is. It's like having information on multiple Excel spreadsheets, but they synchronized, and every Excel spreadsheet says the same thing. Every time you add a row in one, all of the other rows, Excel spreadsheets magically have an additional row of information in them. That's blockchain as a technology. Now, on top of that, we have cryptocurrency. So that's a way of using this blockchain technology, is I can give funds to you and I can record the transfer of funds from me to you in these fancy Excel spreadsheets. Now, one of those cryptocurrencies is called Bitcoin, and there are many cryptocurrencies, literally thousands. But Bitcoin was basically the father of them all. It started the whole thing. Then we got Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is a second generation blockchain software. So yes, Ethereum is a currency, a cryptocurrency, but it also paved the way for enabling us to use this fancy Excel spreadsheets to do other things, not just transacting with currency, but we can use these fancy Excel spreadsheets, aka blockchain, to do contracts and to build applications on top of. Then we get to a DApp, which is a distributed application. So thank you, Ethereum, you paved the way for dApps, and further specialization out of what Ethereum gave us is smart contracts, which is where things automatically get executed. We then have NFTs, which allows us to protect intellectual property, and we have distributed or decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, DAOs, DAOs. And there's a definition of it there for you. So that's just a glossary. Hopefully that's now opened up your mind a little bit, that blockchain is not just Bitcoin, but a number of other things, and there's a lot of use cases. And this is now what you're seeing. So why would you use blockchain? So let's consider that for a moment. Within supply chain, we can store information about what is happening to a product in terms of logistics. You can go further back and let's maybe talk about ethical mining, the diamond trade. We can incorporate blockchain to record where a diamond originates from, that eventually lands on my wife's wedding ring or earrings, or I don't know, different places that people put piercings and want diamonds. So that's information we can store on the blockchain. We can save cost. So instead of manually recording all this information and then trying to extract data and writing programs to pull data out of different data sources, we can save money by recording it in the blockchain and using blockchain as a database. Information and data security are pretty much baked into blockchain. We encrypt what goes into the blockchain and very securely encrypt it. So we cover information and data security there. We can use it for crowdfunding. So that's really what the distributed autonomous organization or decentralized autonomous organization is about, is allowing us to source funds from multiple people and deploy those funds in a way that they want those funds to be deployed. And that immediately also leads into philanthropy. So great use case for philanthropy. We have intellectual property protection. I think, Nicolene, if I maybe ask you to come on camera and just talk to us a bit about NFTs and intellectual property.
Thank you, Vincent. I think we need to start with the point of view or where we are from a regulatory point of view beyond blockchain. And of course, around the world, we've got well-established protective mechanisms for intellectual property. These are typically registered with a registrar, and those will remain as is. So if you have any intellectual property rights that are registrable within the normal context, those protections will still stand. When, however, we aim to sell these property rights on the blockchain using utilities such as NFTs, it is important that we get jurisdiction-specific advice in order to make sure that the transfer happens in the relevant public office as well, until such time as all of these things become interconnected, because right now it isn't.
Yes. Thanks, Nicoline. Yeah, I think important points is blockchain can enhance our legal system, but at the same time, it's hampered by the legal system because not all aspects of it are on the blockchain as yet. Great. Yeah. So that's in terms.
I could interrupt there quickly, Vincent. Nicoline is unfortunately not on the cruise ship with us. She's busy with a very important case, so we had to zoom her in from elsewhere.
Happy to be here.
And then the next use case is international payments. So this almost combines all the aspects of why you should use blockchain. And the reason why is because it's the oldest part of blockchain, if I could put it that way. Cryptocurrency has really been the first use, widely adopted use of blockchain. So think about an international transfer. Most banks use a system called SWIFT, but maybe you don't use a system called SWIFT. Now, I want to get money from myself to Michelle. I have to contact a foreign exchange agency. I need to give my currency to them. They need to convert it. There's transfers that happen. There's intermediaries on my side. There's intermediaries on Michelle's side. And eventually, Michelle will get her money a few days after I have tried to make the transfer to her. Even if I use SWIFT, I still have issues in terms of how quickly I can get money to Michelle. It's not an instant thing. And I would need to go onto my bank, say, I want to do this transaction. My bank may say, hold on, do you have things in place to be doing this transaction? I then do the things I need on my side. The money goes across to Michelle, and Michelle then needs to do things to accept and receive the money on her side. So it's quite a slow and cumbersome process. Where with cryptocurrency, I have my wallet, I have Michelle's wallet address. I say I'd like to transfer these funds to Michelle's wallet, and it's done. Michelle has the money in her wallet. Much simpler and much quicker. Yes, there are dangers. I could put her address in wrong, and then the money's gone. So you've got to be cautious when you now take intermediaries out of the process, because they offer a layer of protection that is now absent. But I've saved cost, I've saved time and complexity. Nicoline, is there something you'd like to add to that aspect of the discussion?
Very briefly, I think you've already touched on it, Vincent, that the banking system and the process of international transfers does offer a layer of protection. But I think beyond that realization, it's also very important for us to not lose sight of the convenience factor if we use utilities like cryptocurrency. And you mentioned earlier that I was lucky enough to be one of the first legal practitioners involved in an equity transaction using cryptocurrency a couple of years ago already. And again, if we make sure that the details are intact, that we own checking those ourselves, the convenience factor and the risk could very much equate to one another, meaning that it's a responsible, well-considered decision that you make. But bear in mind, there are risks. So thank you. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Yeah, and then the last block we got there is access to new markets. Now, blockchain in itself is creating new markets. So by participating in blockchain, as it evolves, we discover new applications and new markets are evolving. So just within that, you have access to new markets. But there are a number of other ways in that it is opens up international gateways. It eases international transacting. There are a number of ways that it gives access to new markets. I think I'd like to pause there again, Nicoline, and just I don't know if I'm going to ask a question so much as pose a statement, which I'd like you to comment on. Blockchain makes it very easy to transact internationally. But say I set up a distributed or decentralized autonomous organization where I'm raising funds to it's a great cause. I want to and there happens to be someone on the call, and so I'm thinking of a cause that she's working with. I want to build schools in Africa using recycled bricks. I mean, that's an amazing cause. So let's go raise funds. We set up a decentralized autonomous organization to do that. I'm thinking it's done. It's on the blockchain. I'm sorted. I don't have to worry about stuff. But surely there are some pitfalls there.
Thanks, Vincent. I think that's the most frequent use case we've seen in the work that we keep ourselves busy with at the firm. And it's important for us not to lose sight of making sure we communicate effectively, whether it be with our sponsors or with the donors or our clients, however we've structured things, whether it's for profit or not for profit, so that people have transparency in our communication as much as the blockchain itself gives us transparency. So what are we promising people? What underlies the transaction that will take place on the blockchain? That's really where the pitfalls could originate from. For example, if we talk about tokens for a minute, and I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, what you are acquiring, what is linked to the token, what is in it for me, is a critical question to answer. Why? Because if we project, if we say, this is what reward you will earn if you bring 2 of your friends or 5 of them, we run a very, very a real risk of it being considered, in simple terms, a pyramid scheme, a Ponzi scheme, something unsavory and unlawful. So it's absolutely critical to make sure that your structure is solid, that your messaging and the legal documentation going with that is solid, and then utilizing the blockchain for the execution of what you're aiming to achieve. But the two really need to speak to one another, and we really need to make sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed.
Okay, so that good intention of mine could land me up in jail if I'm not careful. Thank you. And so now these are the use cases. How are we going to figure out if this is going to work in your business? So I'm going to ask Dr. Michelle Boyson, to talk us through the way that we help businesses unpack how we can apply blockchain in their business.
Thanks, Vincent, and hello everyone again. There's some cool questions coming through on the chat. We'll gather those for the Q&A session a little bit later. So this is the part that I love, and when things start making sense to me. The question you ask yourself is, why should I think about blockchain? There's a list of elements that Vincent had now quite clearly described to us that would highlight the application of blockchain. And Nicoline has given us some of the legal elements to consider around that. Now, well, those are all things to know, but how do you actually practically go about to know whether it's useful for me or not? So how we figured out to make this work, and I personally have, for the first time I heard about blockchain was 2012. So I'm probably then called a very late adopter if we look at all of this stuff where it started in 1970, which means I was still in little school at that time. But be that as it may, what are the things that you start off by saying, what are the things that happen in my business? Generally, you should be able to describe your business in a number of activities. And each one of those activities, if you look on the screen, should result in some sort of an outcome. So ideally, you would do things, you would build, sell, support, provide services or products through a range of activities. And eventually you would want to measure those things and say, yeah, the business is doing fine. We're on track with our strategy. So that is what we call a level 1 process. The next level of process mapping then, and this is so easy, you could literally pull out from the printer an A4 page and write down the main activities in your business, and then what processes do I deploy to make those activities realize. So a process is more detailed. And it basically has steps in it. So you would just, the little yellow and gray and blue blocks are a collective of steps that you would undertake to make a process happen. And that process needs to contribute to your activity to bring out results. You can then, and I'm pretty sure you're quite aware of the areas in your business where there are burning points, where things aren't working the way they should be working. So simply put some icon there and say, well, potentially, these are the areas that are not working well. Next, you can say, what would I like to change? It might not be burning points, but if we could get a sale faster, if we could record something quicker, if we can get payment quicker, why don't we consider doing a change? And what we're sharing with you now is generally how you could look at your business. Now, superimpose on that, you can ask yourself, in this picture, where do I have an area where I need information security? Now, you probably say, well, it's pretty much everywhere in this process because there's information throughout this diagram that you see. Where do I actually store data? What happens in my supply chain? Which of these processes are about supply chain? And so forth. So there's 10 elements there that you could look at and then say, well, those 3 processes that were initially like the burning points, of those, at least one of them can be addressed by blockchain. Why? Because maybe it provides for secure payment, or maybe it has a specific following of a piece of equipment that you have to bring into your supply chain. And if we move forward, then this picture could allow you then even to say, where can I start using cryptocurrency? Where can I consider thinking of a smart contract? And if we just make this more practical, there is a very practical way is, if you started by saying let's say I'm in the microchip production, distribution and support business to the left. I understand my market and the trends. And the result I want out of that set of activities is, who do we sell to at when, at what stage? So there's a market research process that gives you that result and so forth. So you read the story accordingly. That example should then highlight what we just discussed in the previous slide. So over here, there is, for instance, when you do market testing, there's personal information that happens there. Data security, maybe I could use blockchain there. I have a supply chain that helps me to produce things so that I can respond to the market and what clients need. And maybe I should start thinking about putting smart contracts in place, which again is also based on the blockchain. If we go to sales, why don't we start selling our wares, products and services using crypto? And again, you can see there is blockchain, and yeah, we want to do smart contracts there as well. So by now you should see that the story actually is quite quite simple. What happens? Where do you have risk areas, and which of those can be addressed by blockchain? And if we just superimpose that list again, I'm not sure if it's in this slide. There we go. So in this instance, we looked at items number 1, 2 till 7, and thought that those areas are relevant to the spots that we had put the icons on. And there you go, voila. This is how I could apply blockchain in my business. And basically, it addresses certain risks. It could even resolve some of your risks. So you could also look from the point of view of, let's look at where the risks in our business are. Do the risks include any one of those items that we've got listed in words there? And then can I address those risks with the blockchain? So the next question you're probably going to say is, okay, that's a paper exercise, but what does all of this cost? And what we've experienced in the past few months with clients beginning to really pull blockchain into their business processes is some of these blockchain applications already exist as a blockchain as a service type of an element. Some of them needs to be built. We all know that when you build something, it is quite let's call it an effort and a cash intensive situation. But what's really good is that more and more applications are becoming available so that you don't have to spend this long to wait, and you basically rent the application on a month-to-month basis. Thanks, Vincent. I think that was the story I wanted to tell.
Thank you. Yeah, I think something that came out of this now, we spoke about personal information, and I think that's very topical at the moment in a number of countries. Some countries it's old news, and other countries it's up and coming news. Nicoline, are there things that we should be concerned about in terms of personal information and blockchain?
Well, I think if we're talking about some of the countries that are late adopters, it's probably South Africa. POPI, as we call it by acronym, only became effective in its full force a couple of months ago. So it's still being tested. But the point is that all of us, regardless of the technologies we use, are responsible for the data, the personal information in our custody. So if we are collecting supplier data or recruitment data or client data, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. If it's not your own information, you are bound to comply. So if we look at the technology in itself, I think we all need to have a very clear understanding of the type of network we are getting involved in. Is it public? Is it private? And what are the governance provisions relating to it? In other words, what are the T's and C's if you are using an existing blockchain, so that you can get a clear understanding as to what will be visible to everyone else, and to what degree you may want to make the people who will be sharing their information with you aware of how this is going to work. So in itself, the blockchain is very secure. You've said that. I agree with that. From a breach point of view, there are many more points that are unbreachable in comparison to other technologies. Nothing is unbreakable in my experience of life, but it's the best we have right now. And the other point is really to not only understand, but also to know that it's a record that is irrefutable. No one can go and botch it afterwards. We can't have a he said, she said. And in that way, from a human point of view, I think it's got a lot of power in building good relationships, in letting honesty and credibility prevail, because we can't change our minds as humans often do. So there's where I think the real ethical value will lie, but we need to go into this with open eyes.
Yes, absolutely.
We've got Annalisa's, I'm sorry, Vincent, Annalisa has her hand up.
Okay. Shall we take a question now? No?
No, she says no. No, I thought it was just pertaining to the statement. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so blockchain offers that security, and I think we need to add some other aspects of blockchain in and point out there's public blockchain, there's private blockchain, and there's hybrid. So it is possible. Blockchain has transparency, and so by putting my data on blockchain, I am potentially allowing it to be seen. But you could also use private blockchain if it is really that confidential. And the other thing to consider, aside from those types of blockchain, is that as blockchain is developing, it's using its capabilities to empower us. So if you look at some governments that are coming up with EIDs or digital IDs using blockchain technology, I can use that ID selectively. So I can choose to share everything about my identity, my skills, my experience, my qualifications, obviously my ID number with somebody, or I could choose I'm only sharing my ID number, or I'm only sharing my date of birth, because that is all that is necessary for this transaction. So it empowers you to choose what information you're sharing, and also you can even put a time limit on it if we start incorporating aspects of smart contracts and so on into blockchain. These things need to happen. Some of them are happening and are possible, but that is the way that it's going. It's giving you the power as an individual to say, this is what I'll share, and I'll share it for so long. Yeah. So thank you. Nicoline, Michelle, anything you want to add there, or should we move on?
And I think just also superimpose those elements into your business. Doesn't it make it much more transparent and controllable?
Yes, if I could add on to what Michelle's saying, imagine a world where you have access to irrefutable, reliable data as to, and not to go looking for where this portion of it is and where that portion of it is. And the bigger that our business has become, the more the administrative burden of data sorting and keeping it in order and making sure it's reliable becomes a real issue for us. I also wanted to add a little comment on smart contracts. Us in the law space, we are still debating whether or not it constitutes a contract, because it's not expressed in language or in words. It's based on computer language or programming code. And there seems to be consensus about one thing, to say that as long as the code is representative of the intention of the parties, then we've got a valid contract. So again, it's not a simple yes or no answer. In my view, I think if we can say that there was a true expression of what the parties wanted to achieve from both sides, then at its very core, we've got a contract. But again, the jury's still out on that one.
So tongue-in-cheek question there, Nicoline, is at some point in time, I think lawyers had to learn a bit of Latin. So you're going to have to learn a bit of code now.
If you look at any of the authors, particularly those that are focusing on what the legal practice or profession is going to look like in not even 10 years' time, then absolutely we are lobbying for our young lawyers to actually seriously consider learning about programming as part of their training. I think the technological focus is going to be much more intense going forward, and it's a matter of time in my mind before we settle the debate on whether or not a smart contract is that, and whether it is, if we are able to express ourselves as humans in computer language as well as we do it in any other language that exists on the globe. I think we are missing the point here in the bigger picture, but I understand we need to iron out some of the details.
Yes. Okay, so with that is now how you do it. So just think about that now again. Which would you need? Which of these aspects of blockchain is something that can work for your business? Is it a cost saving around a certain area by having a single source of truth or having a go-to database? Is it by streamlining your supply chain, having a smart contract that runs as things occur in your supply chain? Is it going to be securing your data? Is it maybe raising funds for philanthropic purposes, or running your organization in a decentralized way, allowing your employees to be part of the decision-making processes? I think that's an interesting concept that we will see evolve in terms of decentralized autonomous organizations, and so on. So have a look at those. Is that addressing a need in your business? So let's move on to some case studies. So what have we actually done or looked at doing for clients and things that we've done ourselves? So what you're seeing on the screen now is, if I jump back, actually, let me quickly jump back to Michelle's very pretty slide. And these yellow blocks, if we take one of these yellow blocks, that is essentially now what we are seeing in more detail. Oh, now I've gone too far. And there we go. It's what we're seeing in detail over here. So this whole section at the top is a detailed process, one of those yellow blocks expanded out, of an events management company. So they would get a brief from a client, go through a whole process of understanding what that brief is about, and then put together proposals, go out to market, find out what the various things are going to cost, give the client a bunch of options, trim down the options with the client, shortlist them, end up picking one of the options, agree a final budget, then go out to production, procure the things that need to happen for the event, get the sounds and lights and the goodie packets and all the different things that they need to get, and then go and execute on the production of that event. And that could be simplified in a perfect world with unlimited funds. So this could be very expensive, but we will also talk about cost-effective ways of doing it. But I've taken this to the extreme and said that very complicated process with all of these little blue squares, lots and lots and lots of them, and I'm not even going to try count them, we could simplify down to 5 steps using blockchain technology. And how we do that is by using the blockchain as a single source of truth, where all of the suppliers and clients in the ecosystem of this customer of ours participate. So they are updating, these are the products I offer, these are the prices of the products from a supplier perspective, and from a client perspective, they are then picking the different things that they want. The client says, okay, this is the bouquet of products that I want, which is real time based on the products they've chosen, the suppliers that are providing the services to the events management company. And then they do a transfer of crypto funds. And the smart contract then monitors what's happening on the blockchain, so that as the event unfolds and eventually is executed and customers say, wow, that was a great event, the funds are released out of that crypto deposit that was paid. So you could simplify that. If we got the whole ecosystem of this events management company on the blockchain, we could trim down that very complicated process at the top down to 5 steps, nice and manageable. Nicolene, I just wanted to ask here on the supply chain, what about funds being in escrow? So what we were showing here is that the client pays the deposit, and basically the smart contract's holding that in escrow and then releasing that before the event part of it, and at the end of the event, the balance is released. Is that a legitimate Can we do that?
I think in a traditional setting, we have to say that is typically what we are doing right now, right? So if we have a agreement of whatever nature and certain milestones needed to be reached, certain conditions needed to be met, then those would be triggers for the payment to be released. Now, if we're talking about a local payment, that would mean someone would have to log in, EFT the amount. If it is a cross-border transaction, then of course these Forex agents get involved. Reserve Bank gets involved on the South African end, depending on the amount of money. So this can become a terribly administrative procedure. And this could be an answer as to the efficiency of it. So I would say, to answer the question, yes, absolutely legal. It's something we are currently doing in a very cumbersome, costly, laborious way. So if there is buy-in from whomever will be utilizing the platform, whether it be the supplier or the customer and yourselves, for example, that would be key. So there's consensus, everyone's happy with the methodology. I mean, this cuts out a lot of red tape, a lot of time, a lot of inefficiency. And if we ever want to see how the money flowed, there's irrefutable, accessible audit trail record that we can say, but this is how it happened and this is why it happened that way, without having to go to the bank and to get some printouts and then to this person and that person. So I think it's a fantastic idea. And if everyone's in agreement as to the use case and the data that will be flowing through it, why not?
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicoline. Okay, then another use case is what you see on your screen. There's a QR code, and if you actually take your cell phone, so I've got my cell phone here, I open up the camera app and I point it at my screen. It then gives me the ability to open up a link, and I then can't quite see that, but there's a certificate that's downloaded onto my phone, and I can see a qualification of someone that they received on the blockchain.
And for those of you who have your phones ready and at hand, open up the camera app, quickly scan there, and you'll see the certificate.
Yeah, and that now has greater use. That could be a skills passport. So we combine that with an e-identity, a digital identity of the government. And when someone now says, I am Vincent, and these are my qualifications, it's an irrefutable proof of my identity and the qualifications associated with my identity. So a very simple little app built on the blockchain there. And then minting of NFTs. Another use case where we've built a platform where you can purchase an NFT where we will donate the proceeds to help out animals in the Ukraine that have been displaced by the war, and you then get an NFT in exchange for that purchase.
And we simply built that for two reasons. Is we wanted to do something, and we thought by building this, it's minting an NFT should not be a hassle. So it's again, there we go, Stan. Being able to do your own NFTs within your company and inviting participants to come and mint their own NFTs against a certain activity. It is one of those things as a service. You don't have to go and build it. So you can put it, if you've identified a place to issue those kinds of elements, it's there as a service. So these two elements that Vincent just showed, the NFT mint as well as NXT cert, are both plugins that you could use if you needed to certify something or you needed to issue NFTs. And we believe that's the way that you would be able to start building blockchain into your business.
Yeah, so these platforms exist for specific use cases. And by taking the different platforms that work for you, you can come up with a cost-effective solution. You don't have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get blockchain in your business. And a lot of these are either pay per use or a monthly subscription, like most other software solutions that we've become accustomed to. So why start now? Going back to the beginning, hopefully you've seen how it can save time by removing a lot of inefficiency in business. It saves cost by removing that inefficiency, but also by simplifying, being a single source of truth. Thank you very much. And I think if you'd like to do the assessment again, while we answer some questions. So the Excel spreadsheet is in the chat. Maybe, yeah, Abby, thank you, on the ball. She's posted it again. So do the assessment again, and hopefully we've moved that needle for you. And we'll start answering some questions now. Michelle, I don't know if you
Right, I'm going to see if I can find those questions. Does anybody, first of all, whoever is KJ, could you just private message Abby, because we would like to send you the recording at the end, but we don't know who KJ is. You just send us your email address. Question here, in this digital age, what is the main inhibitor of the uptake of blockchain technology? So why is it not moving faster?
So you need to understand that blockchains are foundational technology. And then with that in consideration, you need to look at a use case in terms of the ecosystem of the use case. So firstly, you have the situation where I'm going to use it in my business with my staff, and the outside world is not affected. So maybe I've got a skills program in my business, and I just want to record the skills as we train people on a blockchain. That doesn't impact anyone outside of my business. It's very easy to implement. Nothing stops me from doing it right now. If you take Batunk, we wanted to issue NFTs for people donating to a cause that we hold dear. We built a solution. It's there. It's very easy to have deployed. If you talk about things where Nicoline participates, which spans across regulations, across different government bodies, then it becomes very cumbersome to implement. We need all the different aspects of the supply chain to participate in the blockchain for it now to become effective. So for a property transaction, Nicoline, what do we need? Who must participate in the blockchain so that I can sell my property using the blockchain?
Well, in our current environment, you generally have three role players in any property transaction. You've got the buyer, you've got the seller or the landowner, and you've got the agent, which is usually, as we would call them in South Africa, estate agents or realtors. And usually they broker the deal. That's the function of the agent. Now, once the deal is brokered, the agreement must be in writing. And currently our legislation calls for a physical contract, physically printed, physically signed. Once all of that is done, the transfer of ownership takes place in our deeds registry, which is not online. Unlike SARS, for example, we don't have an e-filing equivalent there, but we're working on it. So right now, we would still have a manual process of manually printing the documents, manually signing them, and manually taking them there for the transfer to take place. So the key role players to partake are not just buyer and seller and possibly agent, but importantly, the database known as the Land Registry or Registrar of Deeds in South Africa. That's the main role player that would really make this very efficient.
Yeah,
and the legislation would have to change.
Absolutely.
Change the legislation.
Yeah, I think that if we look at a global scale, those things are busy happening. So
Absolutely.
Certainly. Next question is, what is the benefit of having a private blockchain? Very, very quickly, please.
Private blockchain, you're in control. You determine how it works, how it operates. So it's flexible, it is scalable, and you're in control. Downside, it's not as secure. The security of blockchain is based on how distributed it is. and a private blockchain is not as distributed.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, Dan, for the comment. There was another question around when we spoke about crypto, whether it's the process it goes through is only for cryptocurrencies or for fiat money as well. And my response to the questioner was pretty much for both. The process might just differ slightly. So even if there is no crypto at this stage, there's normal currency, and you can manage the transparency through other elements. It doesn't have to be crypto. So I hope that was a good response. Let's just quickly see, can we have a quick view here of who has moved the needle in their radar of how familiar are you with blockchain? Most welcome, Peter. Thanks, Dan. Great to see you all here. We are at the end of our cruise. We're actually in the harbor already. Mark, great. That's excellent. So handing over to Vincent to bring us safely to shore, and really appreciate your time. All of this will be sent to you eventually as soon as the recording is ready, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we are back at the harbor, and thank you everybody for participating. You may disembark.
Have a good rest of today.